Have you ever felt exhausted, even when nothing bad happened? No argument, no crisis, no terrible news, just a normal day. And yet somehow your mind feels completely drained. Maybe you've heard the same thing your entire life. You're too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. So you try to toughen up, you try to care less, you try to become more like everyone else. But what if the problem isn't that you're too sensitive? What if you're simply processing more than most people? Think about it. Two people walk into the same room. One notices a room, the other notices the tension between two strangers. The loud air conditioner, the uncomfortable lighting, the sadness hidden behind someone's smile. From the outside, they look exactly the same. Inside, they're experiencing completely different worlds. And if your brain is constantly taking in more information, why wouldn't you feel more exhausted? Tonight, we're going to explore a possibility that might completely change the way you see yourself. Maybe your sensitivity was never the problem. Maybe nobody ever taught you what happens when a mind never stops paying attention. Imagine opening your laptop in the morning. At first, everything feels normal. Then you notice something strange. There aren't 5 tabs open. There are 50. Some are playing music. Some are loading videos. Some are running in the background without you even realizing it. Eventually, the computer starts to slow down. Not because it's broken, because it's processing too much at once. For many highly sensitive people, the brain works in a very similar way. You walk into a coffee shop. Most people notice a table and a menu. Your brain notices the loud conversation in the corner, the flashing light above the counter, the tired expression on the cashier's face, the awkward silence between two people sitting by the window. Without meaning to, you start processing all of it. At the same time, this is one of the biggest misconceptions about sensitivity. People assume sensitive individuals feel more because they are weaker, but often they feel more because they are noticing more. Research suggests that highly sensitive people tend to process information more deeply than average. A small comment becomes a larger reflection. A brief interaction becomes a detailed memory. A subtle change in someone's mood becomes something impossible to ignore. The result is invisible mental traffic. By the end of the day, your brain isn't exhausted from one major problem. It's exhausted from carrying hundreds of tiny pieces of information that most people never even noticed. And this creates a question that few people ever ask. If your mind is processing so much more than everyone around you, what happens when it can't stop? A few years ago, Daniel had a conversation that lasted less than 5 minutes. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a breakup. It wasn't even particularly important. As he was leaving work, someone casually said, "You seem a little quiet lately." The other person forgot about the comment almost immediately. Daniel didn't. That night, he thought about it again. The next morning, it was still in his head. 3 days later, he found himself wondering what they really meant. Were they concerned? Were they judging him? Had he done something wrong? This is what psychologists sometimes call deep processing. The event ends, but the brain keeps working. For many people, experiences pass through the mind like clouds moving across the sky. For others, every experience gets pulled deeper, examined, replayed, analyzed from different angles. The strange thing is that deep processing can be a gift. It helps people notice patterns, build empathy, create art, understand people, but it also has a hidden cost, because your brain doesn't always know the difference between solving a problem and endlessly revisiting it. A conversation becomes a story becomes a concern becomes anxiety, and before long you're carrying emotional weight that nobody else remembers. If you've ever replayed a conversation in your head for days after everyone else moved on, comment "me" below, because what feels like overthinking is often something deeper. Your mind is trying to extract every possible meaning from an experience. The problem is that some experiences don't contain any more meaning, and yet your brain keeps searching anyway. Which raises another question. If a single conversation can stay in your mind for days, what happens when you're surrounded by hundreds of people at once? For a long time, Daniel thought there was something wrong with him. His friends could spend hours at crowded events and leave feeling energized. He couldn't. A few hours at a busy restaurant, a shopping mall, or a large gathering would leave him feeling strangely exhausted, not physically tired, mentally drained. The reason is simpler than most people realize. When you're highly sensitive, people are not just people, they are information. Every face carries emotion, every voice carries meaning. Every interaction creates data for your brain to process. While someone else is enjoying the atmosphere, your mind may be unconsciously tracking dozens of signals at once. Who seems uncomfortable? Who seems anxious? Who is pretending to be happy? Who wants to leave? Most of this happens automatically. You don't choose to do it. Your brain simply notices. And the more people around you, the more information arrives. Imagine trying to hold a conversation while 50 browser tabs are updating at the same time. Eventually, the system slows down. Not because it's weak, because it's overloaded. This is why many sensitive people feel relief the moment they get home. The silence isn't boring, it's recovery. For the first time all day, the stream of incoming information begins to slow. But crowds are only part of the problem, because some of the biggest drains on your energy don't come from people at all. They come from the small, invisible things you barely notice, yet experience every single day. Most people assume exhaustion comes from big problems, a difficult job, a major loss, a stressful life event. But for many sensitive people, energy disappears in a completely different way, not through one large drain, through hundreds of tiny leaks. Imagine filling a bucket with water. At first, everything seems fine. Then small holes begin to appear. One leak doesn't matter, neither does the second, or the third. But eventually, the bucket is empty. This is how many people lose their energy every day. A notification appears on your phone. A loud motorcycle passes outside. A bright screen flashes in your peripheral vision. Someone complains about their problems. The television plays in the background. Individually, none of these seem important. Together, they create a constant stream of interruptions that your nervous system never fully escapes. The problem is that most of these leaks are invisible. You don't notice them happening. You only notice the result, the brain fog, the irritability, the feeling that you need to be alone. Daniel discovered this the hard way. Every evening he came home feeling exhausted. He blamed work, he blamed stress, he blamed himself. But one weekend he spent an entire day away from notifications, traffic and noise. Something unexpected happened. The exhaustion almost disappeared. For the first time, he realized that his energy wasn't being destroyed by one major problem. It was being slowly drained by dozens of small ones. And once you see those invisible leaks, you start to understand something even more important. Not every feeling you're carrying actually belongs to you. Sometimes you're carrying emotions that started in someone else. Have you ever started the day feeling completely fine and ended it carrying a sadness you couldn't explain? No bad news, no personal problem, no obvious reason. Yet somehow your mood had changed. Daniel noticed this happening all the time. He would meet a stressed coworker and spend the rest of the afternoon feeling uneasy. He would listen to a friend's problems over dinner and come home emotionally exhausted. At first he thought those feelings were his own, but over time he realized something strange. Many of them weren't. Highly sensitive people often have a tendency to absorb emotional information from the people around them. Not because they're weak, not because they're imagining things, but because their brains pay close attention to emotional signals. The problem is that attention can slowly turn into identification. Someone else's anxiety becomes your anxiety. Someone else's frustration becomes your frustration. Someone else's sadness follows you home. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional contagion. Emotions spread through groups far more easily than most people realize. And if you're especially sensitive to those signals, you may end up carrying emotional weight that never belonged to you in the first place. That's why one of the most important skills you can learn is asking a simple question. Is this feeling actually mine? Have you ever walked into a room feeling fine and left feeling emotionally exhausted? Comment yes below if that has happened to you, because once you learn to separate your emotions from everyone else's, you stop treating your energy like an unlimited resource. And that's where everything begins to change. Most people think of energy as something physical. If you sleep enough, eat well, and exercise, you should feel fine. But for highly sensitive people, energy works differently. It behaves more like a bank account. Every morning, you wake up with a certain amount. The question is not how much you have, the question is how quickly you're spending it. A crowded meeting costs energy. A tense conversation costs energy. Constant notifications cost energy. Even making small decisions throughout the day can slowly drain your reserves. The mistake many sensitive people make is treating their energy as unlimited. They say yes when they're already exhausted. They stay in environments that constantly overwhelm them. They ignore the warning signs until the account reaches zero. Daniel used to do exactly that. Whenever he felt drained, he pushed harder. He believed rest was a reward that had to be earned. But eventually, he realized something important. Energy is not just something you spend, it's something you manage. The most emotionally healthy people aren't necessarily stronger than everyone else. They're simply better accountants. They know what gives them energy, they know what takes it away, and they protect that balance relentlessly. Because once you start treating your energy like a valuable resource instead of an endless supply, you stop asking, "Why am I so exhausted?" And you start asking a much better question: what deserves access to my energy in the first place? Once Daniel started protecting his energy, he noticed something surprising. He didn't need to change his personality. He didn't need to become less sensitive. He simply needed better filters. The first filter was simple. Not every thought deserves your attention. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it contains an important message. Some thoughts are useful, others are just mental noise. The second filter was even more powerful. Not every emotion belongs to you. You can care about someone without carrying their pain. You can support them without making their struggle your responsibility. And the third filter changed the way Daniel lived his life. Not every request deserves a yes. For years, he said yes because he didn't want to disappoint people. But every unnecessary yes became a silent no to his own well-being. So he learned to pause, to breathe, to ask himself a simple question: do I truly have the energy for this? These three filters won't remove every challenge from your life, but they will stop your mind from carrying burdens it was never meant to carry. And once that happens, something remarkable begins to unfold. You stop seeing your sensitivity as a weakness and start seeing it for what it really is. For most of your life, you may have believed that your sensitivity was something you needed to fix, something you needed to hide, something that made you weaker than everyone else. But what if the truth is the exact opposite? What if your sensitivity is the reason you notice beauty where others see nothing? The reason you understand people so deeply, the reason you can feel what others miss. The goal was never to become less sensitive. The goal was to stop living without boundaries, to stop carrying what isn't yours, to stop giving away energy you cannot afford to lose. Because sensitivity without protection becomes exhaustion, but sensitivity with wisdom becomes strength. So if you've spent years feeling different, overwhelmed, or misunderstood, know this: there is nothing wrong with you. You may simply be experiencing the world more deeply than most people. And if you're one of those people, comment orchid below. I'd love to know you're here. Take care of your energy, protect your mind, and never apologize for feeling deeply.